Hello, hello. Welcome to another video. My name is JT Cardin with the agency Scottsdale. Before I get into it, I want to apologize to my two loyal viewers for how long it took me to get another video out. To you both, I am sorry. I will try and do better next time. This video is going to take a look at the trends in the first quarter of 2026 in the four areas that I would consider to be the key indicators for the Phoenix metro luxury market. Those areas are Biltmore, Arcadia, Paradise Valley, and the portion of Scottsdale inside of the Loop 101. As always, you can make an argument that some of these areas shouldn't be included, that there are other areas that should be included, but for me and my purposes and the markets that I serve, these are very good indicators of how the market overall is doing and what trends we can expect through the rest of the year. If you like this analysis, I would invite you to follow the link below in the comments below to my website. I've got a magazine that I put out every quarter that analyzes the data, kind of like we're doing here, with a general overview, and then breaks it down into each area so you can see how the area did against itself quarter over quarter. It also has some great articles from local businesses that I think are really worth checking out. So if you're interested in learning more from this video, go ahead and follow that link and ask for a copy. I'd love to send you one. With that, let's go ahead and get started on the general analysis of how these markets did, and then we'll jump into each individual submarket and how it did against itself. Jumping into this overview, there are two key statistics that I look at where all four areas kind of had the same results in the first quarter. The first one is going to be that all four areas had a very solid increase in list price for what was accepted at the end of the day. Now, that would sound really good, especially if you're a seller, but this is coupled with the fact that the sale to list price ratio stayed flat. This is compared to quarter one of 2025. Now, what that means is the difference between what was asked and what was eventually accepted stayed the same. Scottsdale's the odd man out in the rest of these statistics. Paradise Valley, Biltmore, and Arcadia, they also saw a pretty distinct, although not as dramatic as the sale price, increase in price per square foot. This is where you can actually see more or less if the quality of the home is improving or not. Now, because they all increased a little bit, one can make a pretty solid argument that the quality of these homes did increase year over year a little bit, or at least people were willing to pay more per square foot. Scottsdale was the odd one out in that their price per square foot actually dropped. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's unusual with some of their other statistics in that submarket, but the other statistic that I found to be very interesting overall was that in all the three other areas outside of Scottsdale, so again, Paradise Valley, Biltmore, and Arcadia, there's a pretty dramatic drop in the number of homes sold. Scottsdale is different in that they actually sold substantially more homes than they do on average for their first quarter. Now, we'll jump into what that means for each of these areas individually, but I would say overall what this would indicate is that we're in a very nicely balanced market, at least in the luxury space. It means that the sellers aren't going to be getting away with highway robbery, asking exorbitant prices for homes that might be, in all honesty, pieces of crap. And buyers aren't able to demand the sun, moon, and stars when they decide they like a home. Instead, there's a lot more negotiating going on. Homes are going to be on the market a little bit longer. Buyers don't have to act immediately. If they find a home that they like, they can kind of get their finances in order, think about it, make sure that they've got a competitive offer and that they really like the home. It leads to an environment where I think home prices are going to better reflect reality rather than being extremely inflated due to a crazy market like we saw 5-6 years ago. Kicking off our submarket analysis, we're going to get started with the Biltmore. This is my favorite place in the valley. I love the Biltmore, the architecture, the lifestyle, it's all just absolutely fantastic if you ask me. The downside of real estate in the Biltmore is the numbers are very fickle. Historically, you'll only see between 3 and 5 homes sold every month, which means averages can be a little tricky because if you average 3 things, it's a lot less reliable than averaging 30, 50, 70, whatever. So you'll see data that's pretty wonky, pretty all over the place, just depending on what sold in the month. Last year, there was a home that sold for $10 million. You can imagine that the average sale price for that month was astronomical. Did it reflect reality? Not really, because most homes there don't sell for $10 million. But this first quarter of 2026 was, as you would expect, very fickle. It was fickle in the sense that, like I said, historically you see 3 to 5 homes sell every month. At the beginning of the year, January, February, those numbers were a little bit lower. And then in March, you saw an extraordinary 11 homes sell in the Biltmore. That is almost as much as the months of October through December combined last year. So huge. And in addition to that, January and February also saw higher than average home price sales. So when the home sold, the overall price paid was higher than normal. Both of those months had prices averaged out at just under $3 million, which is great. I'd love to see the Biltmore doing well. The negative is that even with an extraordinary number of homes sold in March, the number of homes sold in the quarter as a whole compared to last year is still down 18%. Now, in reality, 18% is no more than 4 homes. So 4 fewer homes were sold in the first quarter of this year than in the first quarter of last year. But it does mean that the market is slowing even though people are paying more. In addition, the Biltmore Greens area in the Biltmore continues to be the hot spot. Historically, that's been the case. It's just where there are the most homes in this community. They're closer together. The HOA costs are a little bit lower because you have more homes to spread around the cost. They're great homes, don't get me wrong, and they still sell for $1.5 million-ish on average. So by no means an average Joe place to live, and that's for like a 2,000 square foot home. Just keep in mind, if you are looking for a home in the Biltmore, that's generally where you're going to see the most activity there. Next on the list, we're going to discuss Arcadia. This is one of the most name brand communities in the Phoenix area, and it's also the area that I grew up in. Now, Arcadia has for years been untouchable in terms of the overall price for homes, the price per square foot for homes, the number of homes sold. The amount of flippers and redevelopment going on there has just been absolutely bonkers. In the first quarter of 2026, we have seen the first sign of weakness in that market. Now, it's not much, but it is something. And it took the form of 41% fewer homes being sold in this first quarter compared to the first quarter of 2025. Now, in terms of raw numbers, that's 32 fewer homes, which is actually pretty substantial, quite a bit different from the Biltmore numbers that we just discussed, but still very noteworthy, and yet still not that worrisome because homes sold substantially faster in the first quarter, and we also saw a very high average for price for each home. Now, it was actually the second highest average for the quarter that I've seen in the past several years, coming in second only to the last quarter of last year. So clearly the past 6 months have been very good to Arcadia in terms of price for the homes and the speed at which they've sold. We've also seen an increase in price per square foot as compared to quarter 1 of last year. It did dip down a little bit compared to the last few months of 2025, and Paradise Valley did come back and surpass it in price per square foot, but it is still a very tight race between Arcadia and Paradise Valley in terms of how much you're paying per square foot on average. Third on the list, we're going to talk about Paradise Valley. For context, the fourth quarter of last year saw a 25% drop year over year in the number of homes sold. Quarter 1 of this year only saw an 8% drop, which to me would mean that the demand is rebounding. Unfortunately, the sale price is also increasing dramatically, so if you were on the margin of buying a home in the golden zip code, you might be out of luck because the prices are not dropping or even staying flat at this point. Now, as I said, the price per square foot did increase this year as well. It jumped up to $1,002 per square foot. That is insane. It's almost as high as Arcadia was on average in the fourth quarter of last year. And more than that, which was about an 18% jump year over year, it saw over 40% jump in the overall sale price of homes. That is insane. For context with that, that means the average home in the first quarter of this year sold for $6 million. Now, part of that is because there were 7 homes that sold for over $15 million in the first quarter of 2026. In all of 2025, there were 8 homes sold over the $15 million mark, and in the first quarter, we've already sold 7. That is insane and bodes very well if you're a homeowner in the Paradise Valley area or want to get into very high-end redevelopment projects. But if you are on the margin of buying a home there, probably not going to find any opportunities anytime soon. Last on our list, we'll be discussing Scottsdale. This is another one of those name brand areas that people have known about for a long time and have generally associated with the luxury market here in Phoenix. What's funny is Scottsdale actually has some of the lowest average home prices, especially in this inside the Loop 101 area. But because of how many homes there are in that area, it also makes for one of the most stable markets that you'll see here in the valley. Now, year over year, there was a huge increase in the number of homes that were sold, 60% more. That's just under 90 additional homes sold in the first quarter of this year versus last year. That is wild. There's also a distinct increase in the average sale price of homes, putting it just under $2 million. That's great news for Scottsdale. My impression is that there are a lot of flips that are being completed or complete teardowns and rebuilds, which are really helping improve the average price of homes in the Scottsdale area. The interesting thing is the amount of time on market also increased, which is not generally what you see when the number of homes sold takes off like that. But the time on market increased up to 75 days, which was about 15% increase, so nothing crazy. Overall though, like I said, Scottsdale is a very stable market. My guess is that the reason we had some strange numbers here is there may have been some pent-up demand over the course of snowbird season. You saw a lot of people buying homes as they were leaving to go back to wherever they summer because no one wants to spend summers here if they can help it. And with that, it likely drove up the prices while the time on market was likely long because those were homes listed at the beginning of the year, end of last year, and are finally being acted on as these buyers are leaving to go back to their summer residences. And that's a wrap looking at the 4 key luxury submarkets in the Phoenix area. So I hope you realized as I walked through these 4 areas, the numbers are looking pretty good. So if you're a seller, don't be worried about all this talk of markets falling and prices dropping through the floor. These markets all look very healthy. I would say at worst, these are balanced markets. The only one that I'm a little nervous about would be Arcadia, and that's just because so few homes were sold in the first quarter of this year. But at the end of the day, if you're a seller, don't worry. If you are worried, feel free to give me a call or reach out to me. I'd be happy to walk you through some of the more nuanced numbers that I saw that really give me no cause for concern moving through the rest of the year. You'll see the seasonal dip through the summer when homes just generally don't move as quickly in the luxury market. And then I'm anticipating a very normal return to business as usual once we hit the fall and we see a bit more money flowing back into the Phoenix economy with the snowbirds. And with that, I invite you to like, subscribe, and follow me for more helpful information. If you want to dive deeper into these numbers, I'd suggest you go to my website and subscribe to my magazine, The Peaks. It goes into a little bit more detail on how each submarket did. And as always, I'd be happy to chat with you. Coffee, lunch, on the phone, whatever works for you. Just reach out, and I hope I hear from you soon.